Hey folks, since it's about 2 years since I first uploaded a video onto YouTube for the sheer curiosity of it, I thought I'd maybe take things back to basics this week with a review of this, the Juno-X low profile cooler from Raijintek, which I purchased from Overclockers UK for the heady price of £8.99, or about $10 for you in the States. Now, one of the very first videos I uploaded was a review on the Raijintek Aidos, and at the time I bought it simply because I wanted a cheap and cheerful tower cooler to replace the terrible Intel stock cooler I was using on the unlocked dual-core Pentium G3258 anniversary CPU. But times have changed now, and terrible stock coolers, well, they're a thing of the past, at least on the AMD side anyway. The launch of Ryzen brought forth the lovely Wraith Spire RGB cooler on the higher end SKUs, and when the lower end Ryzens launched, a lower profile version of these called the Stealth was released. So with AMD bundling in a pretty tasty cooler in the form of the Spire and the small but competent Stealth, the question I've got is this: is there any point to something like this Juno-X RGB cooler for anyone other than Intel users who have still got to suffer with an anemic stock solution? Well, to find out, we're going to be testing out on this, a small ITX build centred around the Ryzen 5 2400G APU, a package which combines a 4-core 8-threaded CPU along with Vega 11 graphics, which consists of 704 SPs, 44 TMUs and 8 ROPs. And this will be built on the ASRock Vitality ITX X370 motherboard and coupled to 16GB of DDR4 3200 memory. So let's take a look at the Juno cooler. Well, it comes neatly packaged and comes with support for AM3 and AM4 sockets on the AMD side without the use of an adapter, and for the Intel side it supports 11 5X platforms with the use of an included adapter. Taking the Juno-X out of its box, and it certainly looks well built. And being the RGB version, it comes with a few differences over the others available, which come in red, green, blue LED flavours or no LED at all. Firstly, although they all look the same, they actually do weigh slightly different, with the RGB version coming in at a slightly heftier 150 grams compared to the rest of the line's 130. This in theory should give it a bit more thermal capacity, but this is countered by the fact that the fans on the non-RGB versions spin up to 2500 RPM, where the RGB one tops out at 2000 RPM. All versions are rated for the same 70W TDP though. Now, the Juno clips onto the motherboard with a latch fixing, which is quite common for these low power downdraft coolers, and the PWM fan control is a decent enough length to reach even the bottom of ATX sized boards. In an ITX build, it's completely fine though, since the heatsink tapers down to the socket. The fan control wires can be easily hidden by simply wrapping them around the base. What I was surprised at with this cooler was the 4-pin RGB cable. I'd initially thought that for the price, it was just going to mean that being RGB, it simply had 3 different colours of LEDs on it. But no, what we have got is fully controllable lighting by simply plugging onto a suitable header on your motherboard, in the exact same way as say the Wraith Spire RGB does. So that's some plus points there for being controllable by the user. So with the Juno-X RGB installed, it certainly looks good. It certainly looks a lot more than it actually costs, that's for sure. It's a simple design and the colours are vibrant without being too annoying, especially when viewed through a slightly smoked glass case. The cooler's larger than stock size makes it look a bit more purposeful, which is always good, especially if you're moving up from an Intel stock cooler, although when comparing it to something like the Wraith Spire RGB, I do think that the AMD stock solution looks a little bit more classier and unique. So the price checks out, the features check out, and while the looks kinda check out too, but what about performance? Well, to compare the coolers, I've locked all 3 at their maximum fan speed, and set the 2 Corsair SP120 fans in the case at a constant RPM. On the desk and at a distance of about 1 metre, the Stealth and the Juno, even at maximum RPM, are still quieter than the 2 SP120s, with the system coming in around 36 decibels. The Wraith Stealth has a maximum RPM of 1900, whereas the Juno-X tops out at 2000. The Wraith Spire is a bigger beast altogether, and it uses an aluminium heatsink with a copper core. The fan size is still 92mm like the other 2, but it uses a 5-fin design instead of the 7 that we see on the Stealth, and it spins up to 2700 RPM, or about 33% faster than the Juno-X. This of course is going to offer better cooling over the two low profile coolers, but it should be noted that at maximum speed it's also a bit more notable over the SP120s, not so much in terms of raw volume, which the whole system still came in at 37 decibels, but the higher RPM fan does mean that an additional frequency is noticeable. It's certainly not annoying or loud, it's just different compared to the two low profile coolers. And finally, to keep all the testing here as consistent as possible, I've decided to completely ditch the included thermal paste in favour of some bog standard MX4 for all three coolers, as I've used my Wraith coolers on multiple builds in the past and the stock AMD TIM is long gone. But all I can say for the Juno-X in regards to noise is at max speed it's not really even audible, it's totally unobtrusive and I'd be happy to have it sitting on my desk. So the results are as follows. At idle, there's not much in it, with all three coolers keeping the Ryzen 5 APU under 30 degrees. To get load on both the GPU and CPU, I run the CPU-Z stress test, which plonks about 100% load on all 8 threads in this case, and had a windowed graphics test loop running in the background. Kicking things off with the Wraith Stealth, and we get a gradual increase over the 3-minute test run, with things starting to level off towards the end of the test, and if we take an average of the last 30 seconds of the test, it averages out at 72 degrees C. The beefier Wraith Spire returned a similar temperature curve to the Stealth, but at a consistently lower temperature, and it did start to level out around the 2-minute mark, with the last 30 seconds or so seeing an average of 65 degrees, which should be no surprise really, as the cooler's rated to 95 watts, whereas the package we're using is a 65 watt TDP part. Now the Juno-X being a lighter cooler, it's about half the weight of the Stealth, seen a much sharper increase in temperatures when under load, as can be seen by the steepness of the curve. It did level out fairly quick though, despite its sharper increase at the start. In the end, the average temperature over the last 30 seconds of the test came in at about 75 degrees, which it maintained for a fair while after that. Now, while this is higher than the Stealth, it should be noted that the Stealth was still increasing in temperature towards the end of the test, and it should still be an improvement on what you would get with a smaller Intel heatsink. And even when stressing the GPU and CPU on the Ryzen 2400G package, it does manage to keep the package well below the thermal limit. In general use and even gaming, the Juno-X does manage to keep the APU cooled, and it's worth mentioning that in those types of tasks, there's no real discernible difference between the performance of the Juno-X RGB and the Wraith Stealth temperature wise. So the Wraith Spire, when all said and done, was always going to walk away with this performance test when we're comparing it to these two low profile units. The Juno-X, it does actually offer up a nice cheap little side grade for users with lower TDP parts. No, there's not much headroom and the performance is not going to blow you away, but that was never the point of the Juno-X lineup. It can be had for under a tenner and it offers stock-like performance, but with a little bit more flair on the side, and if that's what you're looking for, it's going to fit the bill nicely. The way I see it, the Juno lineup makes perfect sense for a couple of groups. Firstly, if you're running a lower SKU CPU, like a non-K Intel CPU for example, and just want something that offers up decent performance at a great price and looks better than the stock unit, but you don't want to break the bank. Secondly, if you're building in a space-constrained ITX build, the Juno-X comes in at a total height of 58mm, and while this is 4mm higher than the Wraith Stealth, you are getting similar performance with the addition of programmable RGB lighting. So no, you're not going to be overclocking on the Juno-X, but if you got it as a stocking filler, well, I wouldn't be disappointed with it. So the Juno-X, an honest and simple cooler that does nothing wrong and can add a little bit of spice to a budget build. Yes, it falls short compared to the Wraith lineup from AMD, but as a pocket money upgrade, especially in a space restricted case, I'd maybe give it a nod of approval. It's not a cooler for everyone, but it will be a good choice for some of you out there. Simple, easy to install, and has all the features you would want for less than a tenner. And because of that simplicity, I quite like it. And if it suits your needs, then I'm quite sure you'll like it too. As always though folks, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the comment section down below, and in the next video.